David and Colleen, the golden couple everyone admired, had met at a raucous college party, their eyes locking across a room pulsing with music and laughter. That night, they had fallen hard and fast, the kind of love that poets wax lyrical about. Over the years, their bond became a fortress, unshaken by life's battering storms. But even the mightiest fortresses can crumble. Their spark, once a roaring blaze, had dimmed to a flicker. The daily grind, work pressures, and the numbing monotony of routine gnawed at the foundations of their marriage. Colleen, restless and seeking the thrill that once came so effortlessly, found herself captivated by the flirtations of a younger man. A dangerous game, but one she couldn't resist playing. David sat in the living room, lost in memories. He remembered their early days, laughter that echoed like music, dreams that soared high. Now, those memories felt like they belonged to another life. He watched Colleen, dressed to kill, getting ready for another night out. She looked stunning, a stark contrast to their increasingly casual and distant interactions at home. "Don't give me that look, David," Colleen said, slipping on her heels. "Women in their 40s often seek younger companionship." David, leaning back and swirling his drink, responded with a cold smile. "And often end up divorced." Colleen's eyes flashed with a mixture of anger and arrogance. "You won't divorce me," she said with unnerving certainty. "You love me, and I love you. This is just a diversion. You wouldn't throw away our commitment over something so small." David's laugh was sharp, cutting through the tension. "Oh, how modern of you," he said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're right, it's practically a trend. Even Joan Bennett, Mrs. Picture Perfect herself, has a lover. Isn't it just darling how everyone pretends their marriages are fine while screwing around behind closed doors?" Colleen's expression hardened, but she said nothing. The silence between them was heavy, fraught with the unspoken words that hung in the air. David took a long sip of his drink, eyes never leaving hers. "Go on then, Colleen. Enjoy your night out. Just remember, every diversion has its price." When the doorbell rang, Colleen shot a glance at David. "Can you get that?" she asked, though she knew the answer already. David didn't even look up from his newspaper. "Nope," he replied flatly, as if she'd just asked him to walk across hot coals. "I'm not welcoming your boyfriend." With a sigh, Colleen opened the door to Ryan, her 32-year-old date, waiting patiently on the porch. "Sorry about that," she said, gesturing towards the living room where David remained entrenched. "He's having a hard time with this whole thing." Ryan gave her a reassuring smile, the kind that seemed to say, "No worries. I've seen worse." He was calm, understanding. It was part of what drew her to him. Back inside, Colleen tried to calm the storm brewing in David. "Ryan's not my boyfriend," she said, planting herself firmly in front of him. "Yet. And let's not forget, we've been together 20 years. I've been loyal, supportive. I deserve a little freedom." David glared at her, feeling the sting of disrespect. "Yeah, freedom to do what? Date some guy you met at Starbucks?" Colleen nodded, unabashed. She met Ryan at the Starbucks in her office building, where his flirty banter made her feel young and alive. All her friends were having affairs with younger men, so why not her? Tonight was just another step in that direction. Ryan pulled up in a sleek, late-model Mercedes, the kind that screamed, "I've made it." At the restaurant, he tipped the valet like it was pocket change and ushered Colleen inside with an air of easy confidence. "I'm delighted you agreed to go out with me, Colleen. You're an incredibly beautiful woman." She smiled, appreciating the compliment but feeling the need to set boundaries. "Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate your attention, but I love my husband. I'm not leaving him." Ryan nodded, unperturbed. "All I wanted was an evening out with a beautiful, intelligent woman, and here we are." The evening flowed smoothly, their earlier coffee chats having laid the groundwork. After a delightful dinner, they hit a jazz club, swaying to the music. Ryan grew bolder, his hand resting on her thigh. She didn't mind. In fact, it was thrilling. Around midnight, they finally left the club. In the car, they kissed, a passionate, heated exchange that left Colleen breathless. But she pulled back. "I should get home." "When can I see you again?" Ryan asked, eyes glinting with anticipation. "I can't meet you every day. Maybe Sunday? Do you like the ballet? My cousin can get us good tickets." "I've never been, but I'd love to go. David isn't into artsy stuff. I'll meet you instead of picking you up at home." "What time?" "It's a matinee. Let's meet for lunch at 11 a.m. They settled the details and drove back to Colleen's house. She kissed Ryan goodbye, steeling herself for whatever awaited inside. To her surprise, David was already in bed, asleep. In the bathroom, she wiped away her makeup, pondering whether to wake him. She feared a silent, cold morning if she didn't. "David," she called softly. He stirred, barely awake. "What? Do you want to talk?" "No, I want to sleep." "Okay, I'll get ready for bed." He started to rise, but she stopped him. "Actually, I have a question." She stepped out in her nightgown, a deliberate choice to show she was still his. "Okay," he said, his voice laced with suspicion. "Did you have sex with him?" David asked bluntly. "No, David. It was just a date. I've never had sex on a first date, you know that." David nodded, but his skepticism remained. "Yeah, but now you're just looking for a sex buddy, not a husband. I thought maybe things had changed. Are you seeing him again?" "We're going to the ballet on Sunday and having lunch," David scoffed. "So this isn't supposed to affect us, but you're seeing him Friday night and Sunday afternoon, our usual time together." "Interesting," Colleen sighed, realizing he wasn't listening anymore. He lay down, turning his back to her. She finished getting ready for bed, hoping against hope that David would come to terms with their new reality. The next morning, Colleen wasn't surprised David was gone. She expected an adjustment period. She hoped he'd be back soon as she planned to spend Sunday with him. But as the day progressed, she realized he was avoiding her. Knowing he often worked Saturdays, she decided to check his office. She wasn't surprised to find his car there. After signing in at the security desk, she took the elevator to the 7th floor and went to David's office, as she had many times before. "Hello, David," she greeted. "Colleen, Oscar told me you were coming up. What do you want?" David asked. "To spend time with my husband," she replied. "Really? Boyfriend busy today?" David shot back. "Stop being childish, David. You've never been the only person in my life. I see my friends every day," Colleen argued. "Unless you're having sex with them, it's not the same," David countered. "I'm sorry this is hard for you. I've tried to assure you that my actions won't affect our marriage or my feelings for you. I love you and want a long life together," she pleaded. "Then why are you doing this, Colleen? Is hurting me how you show love? You're being incredibly selfish," David accused. "I could say the same. My relationship with him is no more significant to our marriage than my friendships. I don't understand your objection," she stated. "You can't even say his name. Keeping him anonymous doesn't make it less harmful," David pointed out. "You know, I don't recall the last time I went on a date with a friend, but I did with him last night and will again tomorrow. He seems more important," David continued. "As I said last night, these are the only times I can get to know him. I've never just jumped into bed with someone, even in college," Colleen explained. "Until you get to the screwing stage," David interjected. "Yes, I'll be discreet so you don't know when it happens, and I'll keep it separate from our time together," she assured him. "Great, at least you'll be discreet," David replied sarcastically. "Anything else?" Colleen winced but didn't protest, hoping to avoid further conflict. "I wanted to spend the day together," she added. "As I told you last week, the quarterly reports are due. I'm always here all day Saturday before compiling data. I expected us to spend Friday evening and Sunday together, but I guess I'm not a priority," David said bitterly. "Oh, David, I'm sorry. With everything going on, I forgot," Colleen apologized. "Whatever. I have work to do," he dismissed her. "It matters to me," Colleen insisted. "Okay then, how about we go to the coast tonight after I finish? We can have dinner at Devereaux's and spend the day tomorrow," David suggested. "Well, the ballet tickets are paid for. I'd feel bad canceling now," Colleen hesitated. "That's okay, Colleen. I didn't expect you to say yes. You can leave now." David had stopped listening. She sighed and left, hoping it would go better. She thought he'd eventually be glad she was happy and accept her assurances. Her plan was to spend a few dates getting to know Ryan better before having sex, intending to meet him only when David was unavailable. She didn't want this to interfere with her marriage, but she wanted this. David didn't come home until nearly midnight, as was usual before quarterly reports. Colleen realized he knew she'd choose Ryan over a last-minute plan. She hoped David might be feeling amorous tonight. He often enjoyed low-key closeness after long days, and sometimes they'd end up making love. She loved him and wanted to make him happy. She waited for him, undressed under the comforter, her bare shoulders visible. "How was work, honey?" she asked as he entered the bedroom. "Same as usual. I got all the data compiled and sorted, so next week's reporting should go smoothly," David replied. He began undressing in the bedroom but went into the bathroom to strip down. When he emerged in shorts, Colleen lowered the comforter to reveal herself. "Darling, I thought we could reconnect tonight," she suggested. "Are you sure your boyfriend wouldn't mind?" David retorted. "David, comments like that aren't helpful. Can't we just enjoy ourselves tonight as husband and wife?" Colleen pleaded. David was conflicted. Despite her actions, he still loved her and was aroused by her. He believed she hadn't slept with Ryan yet, but assumed they had made out. He hoped to win her back before she went through with it, knowing he wouldn't touch her if she did. He dropped his shorts, and Colleen smiled. They spent the next 2 hours reconnecting, hoping to satisfy each other's needs. David hoped she'd abandon her plans for Ryan, while Colleen hoped to show she could fulfill David's needs while seeking satisfaction elsewhere. The next morning, David tried to keep her in bed, expressing his love. As time passed, he sensed her unease. At 10 o'clock, Colleen got up. "I'm sorry, David. I have to get ready." She chose Ryan over him again. "Sure." David put on his shorts, feeling particularly offended by being undressed in front of her as she prepared to meet her lover. He left the room without another look. Colleen felt sorrow watching him leave. She enjoyed their time together, but reluctantly got ready to meet Ryan. She showered, not wanting to meet Ryan with the scent of David on her. She dressed in a modest but alluring outfit and called for David to say goodbye, but there was no answer. Seeing their Mustang gone, she realized he had left. She sighed and drove to meet Ryan, not noticing the sedan following her. Ryan was waiting and assured her it was no problem she was a bit late. They were seated quickly, and she forgot about David in Ryan's presence. The lunch conversation flowed, and she enjoyed herself. The food was excellent, and she briefly thought of suggesting David dine there with her sometime. The ballet was beautiful, and Ryan's knowledge impressed her. He explained the story and meanings behind certain movements, making her aware of the experiences she hadn't had with David. It wasn't a criticism, just an observation of their differences and how they complemented each other. She hoped to get David on board, thinking Ryan could be more than just a fling. After the ballet, they drove to a local hill country overlook with a magnificent view of the city skyline. Colleen knew she wasn't the first woman Ryan had brought here, but didn't mind. "You're such a beautiful woman, Colleen. I feel lucky you're here with me," he said. "Then I guess we're both lucky, Ryan," Colleen said, as they started making out intensely. She felt dizzy with desire for him and wondered if she could wait until the 5th date. Reluctantly, she pulled away and Ryan was visibly disappointed. "I'm sorry, Ryan, I want to, but I have boundaries," she explained. "I know, Colleen," Ryan replied. "I get that you want to be comfortable before going further, but all our coffee dates should count for something. You're right, we did get to know each other well before our first official date. Maybe I'm being too rigid," she conceded. "When can you do a long lunch?" "Not Monday, but Tuesday works. I need time to clean up before going home, so plan accordingly," Ryan said. "I'll bring what's needed. I'll give you details tomorrow morning at Starbucks," Colleen agreed. Ryan drove her back to the restaurant where her car was parked. She got home around 6:30 p.m., feeling elated. She checked her phone for a message from David, but found none. Quickly changing into loungewear, she started dinner when she heard the garage door. "Hi, honey. Have a good drive?" she asked as David entered. "It was fine," he replied curtly. She tried to kiss him, but he turned his cheek, still upset about her leaving his bed for Ryan. At least he was talking to her, though briefly. She hoped last night's lovemaking would help, but it seemed leaving him this morning had erased the goodwill. He didn't ask about her day. "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes, Colleen informed him. "That's fine. I'll be in the office," David said. Colleen quickly made teriyaki stir-fry with rice and called David to dinner. He washed up and joined her. She tried to make conversation. "Where'd you drive today?" she asked. "Nowhere in particular. I just drove on the highway," he replied. "Did you stop anywhere?" she continued. "I had lunch at a small deli off the freeway and stretched my legs a few times. That's it," David said. Colleen tried talking about her day. "The ballet." "I have no interest in your date, Colleen," David interrupted. "This isn't about that. I was just..." Not another word about it. "I just wanted..." David got up, leaving his meal half-eaten, and went to his office. Colleen sat for a few minutes, then cleared the table and packaged the leftovers for David's lunch. She spent the evening straightening the house, hoping David would come out of his office. She wanted to salvage the evening and share the beauty of the ballet, hoping it might interest him in the future, separate from Ryan. Later, she prepared for bed and started reading, still hoping David would join her. Near midnight, she guessed he was waiting for her to fall asleep first. She went to his office. "Are you coming to bed?" she asked. "Eventually. I have things to finish," he replied. "Please, David, come to bed. Lay beside me, make love, cuddle, or just lay quietly. Please don't avoid me," Colleen pleaded. "I told you, Colleen, I have things to finish. If you think that's avoidance, I can't help it. The sooner I finish, the sooner I can come to bed." "So, excuse me," David said. Colleen reluctantly left and returned to bed, no longer interested in reading. She wondered if she was feeling guilty and interpreting his actions through that lens, but dismissed the idea. She believed she was doing nothing wrong and still loved David. She thought he was avoiding her on purpose. Not wanting to make things worse, she turned off the light and closed her eyes, quickly falling asleep. She woke up alone the next morning, finding that David had already left for work. Unsure if he had ever come to bed, she felt increasingly frustrated with his attitude. She had reassured him that nothing would change in their marriage, but he remained intent on feeling hurt. Deciding not to beg him anymore, she planned to continue with Ryan while being a loving wife to David. She dressed and headed to Starbucks as usual to meet her friends. Spotting Ryan in the corner, she joined him after getting her coffee. "I couldn't stop thinking about you last night, Colleen," Ryan said. "Same here, Ryan. I'm looking forward to tomorrow," she replied. He handed her a note. "Here's the info for tomorrow. My condo offers more privacy than a hotel," Ryan said. "Thank you for being discreet, Ryan. I don't want to hurt my husband more than he already is," Colleen said. "Of course." They chatted a bit before Ryan left for work. Colleen then met with Joan, Marge, Ellen, and Gail. Although she knew her friends had lovers, she hadn't shared her plans, fearing it might hurt David if it became public. That night, David greeted her warmly, and they had a pleasant dinner, avoiding the topic of Ryan. Colleen felt hopeful that David was starting to understand her relationship with Ryan wouldn't affect their marriage. She didn't realize he was trying to dissuade her from pursuing a lover. The next day, Colleen arrived at Ryan's condo with anticipation. As soon as she stepped inside, Ryan pulled her close, and they quickly became physically engaged. Within minutes, they were making love, and Colleen experienced an intense pleasure she hadn't felt in years. Afterward, they relaxed in each other's arms. "That was amazing, Ryan," Colleen said, breathless. "Better than your husband?" Ryan asked, a hint of curiosity in his voice. Colleen sat up and looked him in the eye. "My husband is off limits. He's a wonderful lover. If you turn this into a contest, I'm leaving, and it will never happen again. Clear?" "Of course. I meant no harm, just concerned about your satisfaction," Ryan replied quickly. She settled back into his arms. "It was very good. I enjoy being with you and look forward to more." They spent the next 2 hours in a more affectionate manner. Colleen appreciated Ryan's responsiveness and enjoyed their time together. Ryan found her to be a perfect fit for a long-term, mutually beneficial relationship with no intention of marriage. After nearly 3 hours, Colleen showered, using her own soap and shampoo, leaving them at Ryan's condo for future visits. With a final deep kiss, they said goodbye, and she drove home while Ryan returned to work. Colleen calmed herself as she waited for David. She checked herself in the mirror repeatedly to ensure everything was in place. If David didn't know about her meetings with Ryan, it would help smooth things over. When David walked in at 7:13 p.m., Colleen greeted him warmly with a hug and kiss. Initially, he responded, but then his arms dropped and she felt his body slump. Concern filled her face as she pulled away. "You had sex with him today, didn't you?" David accused. "What? David, why do you say that?" Colleen asked, trying to remain calm. "You're a creature of habit, Colleen, and I know those habits. A midday shower was common when we were younger and active, but not in recent years, until today." "I haven't," Colleen started to protest. "The smell of your soap and shampoo is strong. The only reason is that you showered recently, likely to wash off being with him. I appreciate you not smelling like the other man, but it gave you away." He pushed past her and went into the office. "Damn it," Colleen muttered to herself. She thought her plan had worked and hadn't considered the strong scent. She realized she needed to rethink her approach. Sighing, she started dinner, making broiled chicken breast with carrots and linguine. She set the table and went to the office. "David, dinner's ready," she called. "I'm not hungry," he replied curtly. "You need to eat," she insisted. "I'll get something later. I don't want anything you cooked," David said. Suddenly not hungry either, Colleen packed up the food as leftovers. She hated wasting food, even though they were wealthy. She spent the evening trying to figure out how to see Ryan without David knowing. She never considered not seeing Ryan at all. She went to bed alone, falling asleep quickly, thanks to her satisfaction from being with Ryan. She woke at 4 a.m. to find David asleep at his desk. She shook him awake. "David, you can't sleep like this. Come to bed or go to the spare room. This is bad for your back. I know you're angry, but I still love you and want to take care of you. Please." David, disoriented, allowed her to lead him to their bedroom. As she began undressing him, he remembered the events and resisted. Stop, Colleen. David, I'm just trying to get you ready for bed. Please, just a few more buttons, she pleaded. Get your filthy hands off me, David said sharply. Colleen shrank away. David rarely raised his voice in their 25 years together. She sat at her vanity, trying to hold back tears. I'm sorry I raised my voice, Colleen, but you wouldn't stop. I just didn't want you touching me with hands that had been on another man's body, David said, his voice softer but still firm. David, I've showered and washed my hands, but I understand it's more in your mind. I'm sorry. I'll leave you to it. Colleen busied herself elsewhere, believing David would eventually come to terms with her affair. She never considered ending her relationship with Ryan. She saw it as a test of her resolve. After a while, she checked on David, who was asleep. She returned to bed and slept well. The next day, David worked late, informing her via text. She realized she couldn't do more to help him through this and knew what she needed to say next time they spoke. Thursday morning, Colleen was buzzing with anticipation to meet Ryan. They had discussed meeting schedules at Starbucks the previous morning. Mondays were out due to Ryan's busy schedule, and Colleen avoided Fridays and weekends to not infringe on her time with David. They settled on Tuesdays and Thursdays at Ryan's condo. The meeting with her friends felt endless, and when it finally ended, she hurried out, making sure to obey the speed limit. She arrived at Ryan's unlocked condo, where he was waiting on the bed. They skipped foreplay and had another intense 3-hour session. Ryan's flexible schedule allowed them this time. Though she would never admit it, she found Ryan to be a better lover than David due to his experience with many women. Afterwards, Colleen checked her phone and, finding no messages, assumed David would be home at the usual time. She drove home, showered thoroughly, aware this would tip David off, but she had a plan. She dressed in her loungewear and waited for David, who arrived just before 7 p.m. "Good evening, honey. Will you be eating my cooking tonight?" she asked. "I'm fine. I grabbed something on the way home," David replied. "You know fast food is bad for you," she admonished. "Yeah, well, I'll be in the office," he said dismissively. "David, I'd like to talk to you when you have a few minutes," she requested. "Okay," he agreed and went to his office, closing the door behind him. Colleen worked on the fundraiser, but realized David wasn't going to start the conversation. She went to the office and knocked. "David, can we talk now?" she asked. "I suppose," he sighed. Colleen sat down across from him. "Honey, I love you very much. I don't consider my new relationship to affect our marriage, but I understand you do. This is something I need and want. I hoped you'd be more understanding, but I'll be patient. I'll be here every evening and weekend, hoping we can move past this. If you ignore me, I'll accept that, but still be here," she explained. "So you plan to keep seeing Ryan?" he asked. "Yes, wait," she started. "Did you think I wouldn't find out his name?" David interrupted. "I thought you'd prefer not to know. Also, I apologize for the shower incident on Tuesday. I'll start showering every weekday afternoon to avoid tipping you off. I won't be meeting him that often, but it will keep things consistent," she said. "And this is your final decision? Nothing I can do will change your mind?" he asked, his voice tight. "I'm sorry, David, but no," she confirmed. "Well, I appreciate your honesty, even if it's not what I wanted to hear." "Is that all?" he asked, clearly pained. "I love you, David. I hope you can separate my love for you from my physical need that Ryan fulfills," she said softly. David smiled wryly and nodded ruefully. Colleen waited to see if he had more to say, then quietly left, closing the door gently. She had been anxious about the conversation, but was proud she managed it well. She believed David would understand how important this was to her and how little it affected their life together. Colleen spent Friday evening and the weekend at home, only leaving for short errands. She invited David to join her, hoping to allay his fears, but he declined. They spoke as needed, with no hostility but also no affection. She knew he needed time to adjust. She tried to initiate lovemaking on Saturday night, but David deflected her attempts. She remained hopeful, believing it was just a matter of time. Monday morning, David left early. Colleen suspected this would continue for a while, but hoped things would eventually return to normal. Midday showers were inconvenient, but a small price to pay to soothe David's feelings. She met with her friends and listened to their stories about their young lovers, thinking about Ryan and feeling her temperature rise. Gail noticed. "Are you all right, Colleen? You're getting a little red," Gail asked with concern. "I'm fine, just a little warm," Colleen replied, taking a sip of water and trying to focus on the stories again. After another cold Monday night with David, Colleen prepared for her Tuesday with Ryan. He met her at the door in a robe that quickly fell to the floor, and they had a passionate session. After 90 minutes, they relaxed in each other's arms. "I know your husband is off limits, Colleen, but how are things at home? Do you feel in danger?" Ryan asked with genuine concern. "Thank you for your concern, Ryan, but David isn't like that. He's having trouble adjusting and seems distant. He denies avoiding me," Colleen explained. "So you're still talking?" "That's a good sign," Ryan noted. "In short phrases, only as necessary. I've assured him I love him and made sure I'm there for him. It'll take time for him to see you're no threat to our marriage," she said. They spent another hour in tender lovemaking before Colleen left. She showered and bathed thoroughly, then read her book while waiting for David. He came home at 7:36 p.m. "Hi, honey. How was work?" Colleen greeted him warmly. "It was fine," David replied curtly. "Would you like dinner tonight?" she offered. "I had a late lunch. I'm fine," he responded. "Anything you'd like to talk about?" she inquired gently. "No. I'll be in the office," he said, turning away. "Okay. I'll be here if you need or want me," she added coquettishly. "Duly noted." The door closed softly and Colleen was alone again. She wondered how much of his office time was actual work versus avoiding her. Determined to give him space, she read her book, confident she was doing the right thing. For the next several weeks, Colleen continued to meet Ryan every Tuesday and Thursday, enjoying amazing and intense sex. Evenings and weekends with David remained civil but distant. Colleen offered dinner every night, and David always declined, spending his evenings in the office. She read, worked on charity, watched TV, or browsed the internet. Despite the loneliness, she believed she could have both a loving husband and an attentive lover, giving her strength to endure the lonely moments. After 3 months, Colleen noticed a change in David. While his schedule remained the same, he was coming home in a better mood, albeit a little later. They started having dinner together a few nights a week and sometimes watched TV or read together. Although they hadn't resumed lovemaking, Colleen believed this change signaled a shift in David's attitude. However, after another 3 months without physical closeness, their relationship felt more like that of roommates or friends, and she missed their lovemaking. That evening, Colleen decided to address the issue directly. "David, I appreciate your understanding about Ryan. I know it hasn't been easy," she began. "Well, you didn't give me much choice, Colleen," David replied. "I know, and I'm sorry, but I'm concerned about our lack of sex life. We haven't made love since I started seeing Ryan, and I miss it. When might we take the next step?" she asked. "I haven't told you this, but I have no intention of having sex with you," David said bluntly. "David, that's ridiculous. I always make sure I'm very clean for you. There's no reason for us not to have sex," Colleen protested. "You made a choice and forced it on me. I can make choices too," David retorted. He got up and went to bed, leaving Colleen stunned. She hadn't expected him to cut off sex. She thought having a lover might spur him on, but now she had to rethink her approach. Colleen decided to ramp up the pressure indirectly. She had kept her distance, hoping David would come around, but now she would turn up the teasing. She would become more physical, wear skimpy clothing to bed, or sleep unclothed. She was determined to make it hard for him to resist. However, her plan failed. For 2 months she tried to entice David, but he didn't respond. It had been 8 months since they last made love. While Ryan met her physical needs, she missed the emotional connection with David and became frustrated. After another month, she decided to make the most of whatever David offered. If he wanted a sexless relationship, so be it. She would express her love in other ways and take what he gave. This decision set them on a new path. On a warm Wednesday morning, Colleen parked her Lexus outside David's building, picked up her purse, signed in at the guard's desk, and made her way to the 7th floor. It had been a while since she'd been there during the day, and she had forgotten how busy the office was. Terry, David's longtime receptionist, noticed her as soon as she stepped off the elevator. "Mrs. Lynch, it's good to see you again. It's been a while since you visited," Terry greeted. "Hello, Terry. Is David in his office?" Colleen asked, already walking that way. "Yes, ma'am, but please wait. They're working with confidential documents this morning, so I need to announce you." Terry picked up the phone and called David's extension. "Mr. Lynch, your wife is here to see you," Terry said. Colleen couldn't hear the response, but soon the conversation ended. "He'll be a couple of minutes, Mrs. Lynch. He needs to secure some documents." Colleen nodded and looked around the office, noticing a mix of familiar and new faces. She noted Eileen's desk was empty, assuming she was in David's office. After a couple of minutes, David's door opened and a beautiful woman walked out. Shorter than Colleen, with long dark brown hair and a prominent chest, she looked to be in her late 20s or early 30s. Colleen disliked her instantly. "Mrs. Lynch, nice to meet you. I'm Alana. Come on back," Alana said, guiding Colleen down the familiar hallway. Alana lingered at the door as Colleen entered David's office. "Thank you, Alana. Take lunch now. We'll continue at 2 o'clock, David instructed. "Yes, sir," Alana responded, and left, closing the door behind her. Colleen couldn't help but comment, "How does she manage not to tip over with those things?" David sighed. "I assume you didn't come here to insult my assistant." "What happened to Eileen?" Colleen asked. "She got promoted," David replied. "To what position?" Colleen continued. "Executive assistant. The job was getting too big for her and she needed to slow down. I created a position with less responsibility and no travel," David explained. "So that girl will be traveling with you?" Colleen inquired. "Yes, your jealousy is amusing and ironic, considering the circumstances." "Why are you here, Colleen?" David asked. "To take my husband to lunch," Colleen said firmly. "On a Wednesday?" David sounded surprised. "Yes, because I miss you, David. I wanted to spend time with you and show that I love you," she explained. "Fine, they opened a new Vietnamese place nearby. Let's go," David conceded. They walked mostly in silence, with a few comments on things they saw. Colleen held David's arm, and he didn't seem to mind. They were seated quickly, and the hostess greeted David by name, suggesting he was a regular. They talked about nothing in particular, and David suggested dishes for her to try. Colleen took his hand across the table, and he didn't pull away. "Do you believe I love you, David?" Colleen asked softly. "Love me? My kind of love doesn't allow for what you did, but your kind does." "At least you picked a decent guy," David responded, his tone tinged with sarcasm. "What do you mean? How do you know about Ryan?" Colleen was taken aback. "I had him investigated. I know you go to his condo every Tuesday and Thursday. I noticed you came today to not miss your time with him. But at least he's not a con man or a gold digger," David said coolly. "He's not like that," Colleen defended. Famous last words. "But you're right. He seems to be in it just for the Zex," David remarked. "David, let's change the subject. I came to spend time with you and talk about us," Colleen pleaded. "What us, Colleen? We're more like roommates than husband and wife. We haven't made love in nearly a year," David pointed out. "Your choice," Colleen interjected, and David smirked. "Yes, my choice. You chose to cheat on me. So, no Zex, and our time together is just watching TV or being in the same room. That's why I'm here today. I'm not happy with this, and I want to change it. I have no intention of giving up Ryan, but I want our time to be meaningful," Colleen explained earnestly. "That's what you don't get, Colleen. As long as you're seeing Ryan, this is the most it can be," David countered. "I don't accept that, David. Our marriage can be the same. My time with Ryan doesn't affect my time with you. I don't love him. It's just like spending time with friends," Colleen argued. "But it is different. I don't mind your time with friends because no one should revolve around one person, but I won't pretend nothing's happening while you're with another man. There were 2 people in our marriage. Now there are 3. It's not the same and never will be. Saying you don't love him and just use him for Zex makes it worse. What does that make him? A toy?" David questioned, his voice rising with frustration. By the end of his rant, David's voice had steadily grown louder, and Colleen's attempts to calm him were in vain. When he finished, he took out his wallet, placed a $50 bill on the table, and stormed out. Colleen quickly gathered her things, whispered apologies to those around her, oblivious to their disapproving looks, and hurried out of the restaurant. She glanced towards David's office, seeing him walking away in a hurry, knowing she couldn't catch up. So, she took her time and walked to her car. She struggled to hold back her tears until she got into the car, but once inside, she broke down crying. She couldn't understand why her relationship with Ryan was affecting her marriage. Joan and the other ladies had lovers and were still happily married. Why was it so difficult for her? She thought about discussing it with her friends, but decided against it for now. She didn't want them to think she had failed at something they managed so well. She went home and took her usual afternoon shower, not wanting David to think she had gone to Ryan for comfort. She hoped to continue the conversation calmly after David had cooled down, so she took some time to make herself presentable. The reality was that this issue had to be addressed. They couldn't continue as they had been. David came home late, around 9 p.m. He had the courtesy to let Colleen know he would be late, so she made herself dinner and did some light cleaning to keep busy while waiting for him. "David, can we talk, please?" Colleen asked as soon as he walked in. "I don't know what else there is to say, Colleen. You've had an affair despite my objections, and it's been going on for nearly a year. You think the problem is my objection, not the affair itself? We won't agree, so what's the point of talking again? David replied, his voice heavy with frustration. Yes, I understand that, but I still believe we could be more than what we are. We've been together for 25 years. Surely we can be more than this, Colleen pleaded. We are what we are because of your affair, Colleen. It doesn't make sense, David countered. David, Joan, Ellen, Gail, and Marge all have happy marriages with lovers on the side. Why can't we do the same? She argued. David silently laughed, then motioned for Colleen to sit down. I spoke to their husbands when this started, except Wendell. His affairs are well known, and everyone knows he cheated on Joan first, but I spoke to the others. About what? Colleen asked, confused. Initially, I hoped you'd get this out of your system. I let you go on your dates and even meet Ryan for your afternoon trysts a few times. But after the second time, you made it clear you planned to keep seeing him. So I sought advice from the happy husbands to see how they managed. If they accepted it, maybe they could offer pointers, David explained. Oh, David, that's sweet. Did they give any advice? Colleen asked hopefully. They did, and I've applied many of them, David said, watching Colleen's reaction. Colleen was confused, as she hadn't noticed any changes David had made to strengthen their marriage. Like what? She asked. Did you know that only Rick and Gail continued having sex once Gail took a lover? David began. What? Colleen exclaimed, shocked. Joan started her affair in response to Wendell's infidelity. When Wendell found out, he stopped being with her altogether. It didn't affect him much, David continued. I don't believe it. Joan always says they're happy, Colleen said, shaking her head. She's saving face, Colleen. They spend little time together only for public functions to appear happy. They have separate bedrooms and communicate via texts and emails, David explained. That can't be true, Colleen protested. Marge was next. She and Norm didn't have much of a marriage to begin with. Nothing bad, just indifferent. When Marge heard about Joan's affair, she did the same. Their marriage didn't improve, but they're still married, and Marge is happier, David added. But Marge always praises their marriage, Colleen said, still in disbelief. Probably like Joan. She wants everyone to think everything is great. Image is crucial for older, wealthy women, Colleen, David pointed out. But they're my friends. They'd be honest with me, Colleen insisted. David smiled at this. Gil was next. Rick said he tried to ignore it and continue as usual, but after a few months, it was clear she was bored with him. Ordinary married sex wasn't exciting after her thrilling affair with a younger man. They haven't been together since, David explained. I can't believe this. I can't believe my friends would lie about their marriages. The husbands must be trying to make the wives look bad. And I doubt the husbands are going without Zex, except Wendell, Colleen said, struggling to accept the truth. Oh, they're not going without. They have a simple solution to meet those needs, David replied. Oh, and what is that? Colleen asked, her curiosity piqued. They hired personal assistants, David said, watching Colleen's reaction. Colleen needed a moment to grasp what that meant. When she finally understood, the new girl David hired seemed unfazed by Colleen's reaction and had been expecting it. I hired Alana shortly after your speech. I was truthful about Eileen needing help and creating another position. Actually, I hired Alana for her business qualifications. She has a business degree and came highly recommended for her skills. For the first couple of months, everything was very professional between us, David said, ignoring his wife's jab. Her job requires us to spend a lot of time together, and we got to know each other well. After a couple of months, I opened up to her about what you were doing. It was such a relief to unburden myself. I felt like a weight had been lifted, David explained. That must have been when I noticed your mood improve, and to think I believed you were coming around, Colleen said, a touch of bitterness in her voice. After that, no topic was off limits. We shared almost everything about ourselves. We've become very close, David continued. When did you start sleeping with her? Colleen asked bluntly. Just a couple of months ago. Unlike you, I'm not the type to jump into bed with someone I met in a coffee shop, David replied, his tone sharp. Colleen winced at the insult. Things had been building for some time. We developed an easygoing relationship with lots of flirting and some innuendo. I was confident she was attracted to me by her actions, light touches, standing close, things like that. And I was certainly attracted to her. One night, we stayed late to finish a project. I didn't feel like going home, and she lives alone, so she had nowhere to be. I pulled out a couple of beers, and we drank and talked. We were right next to each other on the leather couch in my office, David recounted. Jesus, David, we did it on that couch, Colleen interjected, her voice rising. David just smiled. Okay, I think I've heard enough, Colleen said, trying to maintain her composure. Sorry, Anyway, that was the start. I figured if you could do it, so could I. But I always do it when you're busy. You purposely stayed late to do it, David added. Like I said, Colleen, we're basically roommates now. You made a choice, and I made mine, David stated matter-of-factly. It's not the same, David. My time with Ryan didn't interfere with my time with you. You can't say the same, Colleen argued. True, but the circumstances were different. You went outside the marriage first. I just responded. The truth is you were considerate since you were the first one. Despite my objection, I appreciate that. But frankly, I didn't think I owed you much consideration, David replied, his tone cold. Colleen was hurting. She couldn't get the image of her husband with Alana out of her mind. For the first time, she realized how her relationship with Ryan, despite the boundaries, affected David. She had assumed it would be out of sight, out of mind, but it wasn't. After a few minutes, David spoke again. There's something else I need to tell you, Colleen, David said quietly. What's that? She managed to whisper. Alana's pregnant, about 2 months, David revealed. Colleen's eyes widened and she gasped. As if things weren't bad enough, it just got worse. It's yours? She stammered. She assures me it is. I'll be making sure, David said firmly. Of course. How did this happen? Colleen asked, her voice trembling. David took a deep breath. It was intentional. Colleen's mind reeled from another blow. She wasn't sure how much more she could take, but she had to know everything. Now was the time to get it all out in the open, no matter how much it hurt. You got her pregnant on purpose, but why? She asked, trying to understand. I have a valuable company, Colleen, that we solely own. Currently, I have no one to leave it to. I had planned to sell the company eventually, but I dislike that idea now. My employees are like family, and I didn't want to leave their futures in the hands of a stranger or worse, a conglomerate. Now, depending on the timing, I plan to leave it to Alana or our baby, David explained. Are you divorcing me, David? Colleen asked, fear creeping into her voice. I'm not planning on it, at least not yet. I plan to keep things as they are. Alana wants to marry me and even paid for a prenup heavily in my favor, but she's also okay with things staying as they are, as long as we spend time together. So the status quo is you can keep seeing Ryan, and I'll have Alana, David said. This was to Ya. Maybe she was naive, but Colleen never expected things to turn out this way. She stood up and picked up her purse and keys. David, I need some time to process all of this. I'm going to take a drive and might be very late. I'll keep in touch by text, so you won't worry, Colleen said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Colleen left the house and drove aimlessly through the city. How had things gone this far? Her husband had a lover who was young, beautiful, with a dark complexion and long, wavy, dark brown hair. She assumed Alana was Hispanic, but wasn't sure. She sent periodic texts to David, letting him know she was still driving, and his response was always the same, please be safe. It gave her some comfort that he still cared about her well-being. She finally arrived home around 2 a.m. and walked wearily into the house. David was asleep, but he had considerately left her bedside lamp on. She went into her closet, changed for bed, and found David awake and sitting up when she emerged. Are you all right, Colleen? David asked, concern evident in his voice. Yes, David, I'm fine, but I'm tired. Let's get some sleep and talk tomorrow, she replied. She climbed into bed and slept. They never got around to talking the next day, mostly because there wasn't much else to say. David went to work and Colleen met with her friends. She thought about canceling her afternoon with Ryan, but didn't, and in the end was glad she went through with it. He immediately noticed something was wrong, and instead of an afternoon of Zex, they talked. When they did have Zex, it was gentle and slow. The next few weeks passed quickly, with Colleen now aware of David's relationship with Alana. David stayed late at the office more often. While she understood, it still hurt Colleen's feelings, and she found herself feeling unwell, spending several evenings entirely in bed. She'd never had a sensitive stomach before, so she took this as a sign that the state of her marriage was deeply affecting her. She finally decided to see a doctor. Colleen Conyers-Lynch stepped off the elevator on the 7th floor of her husband's office building and headed straight for his office. Terry, the receptionist, tried to stop her, knowing that her boss and Alana were in there alone, and potentially in a compromising position. Mrs. Lynch, wait, Terry called out. Colleen turned to Terry, whom she had always liked, and gave her a gentle smile. It's all right, Terry, I already know about them, but thank you for your kindness and concern. Terry could only watch as Colleen continued down the hallway to her husband's office. She entered without knocking, finding Alana on her husband's lap. The sound of the door drew their attention, and both heads turned in unison. Alana quickly jumped off his lap and ran into David's private restroom. "Colleen, what on earth are you doing here?" David demanded, shock and annoyance in his voice. "We need to talk, David," Colleen said, as Alana emerged from the restroom. "It couldn't have waited until tonight?" David asked, exasperated. "It could have, but I wanted to do it here since it concerns Alana as well. Shall we sit on the couch?" Colleen suggested. They all sat, with Colleen on one end, David on the other, and Alana perched on the armrest behind David. Colleen extended her arm, handing David a file folder. "What's this?" David asked, taking the folder. "I'm divorcing you," Colleen said calmly. The look on his face was priceless. Were it not for the seriousness of the situation and the pain she felt, she would have found it amusing. "You're divorcing me?" David repeated, incredulous. "Yes, David. I think you'll find the terms agreeable. I've not asked for any part of the company, though I added a little extra in the cash settlement to make up for it. But it's nothing you can't afford," Colleen explained. David glanced through the terms outlined in the filing and saw nothing objectionable. In fact, it was probably less than the court would have awarded her. The settlement wasn't the problem. The only question David had was why? Or rather, why now? "For a couple of reasons, David, but mostly because I love you," Colleen said softly. "You'll have to explain that," David said, his tone confused. "I've loved you since I first met you at Sheila Mullen's pool party when we were 17. We've been together for more than half our lives, almost 26 years. And I want you to be happy. I made a bad choice and damaged us beyond repair, so I'm setting you free to be happy with Alana and your new baby," Colleen explained. Colleen smiled at Alana as her face lit up with the news that she'd get to marry the man she loved. David was more shocked than anything else. "What about you, Colleen?" David asked, still trying to process everything. "Oh, your generosity will more than take care of me for the rest of my life. I'm embarking on a new period of my life, and I'm a little scared. It's exciting," Colleen replied. "Lots of women live alone, Colleen. I'm sure you'll be fine," David said dismissively. "Actually, that's not what I meant. I won't be alone for long. It seems I've gotten myself pregnant," Colleen revealed. David's jaw dropped, and Alana's eyes widened in surprise. The room fell silent as they absorbed the news. The folder of papers hit the floor with a thud as David looked at his soon-to-be ex-wife in shock. They'd never had kids together, preferring their freedom. They had enjoyed living child-free, but now, as their marriage was ending, they were each embarking on a new adventure. Parenthood. "It's Ryan's," Colleen clarified. Even as he said it, David realized what he implied since he hadn't had sex with his wife in months. It had to be Ryan's. Unless Colleen had another lover, he had no desire to hurt or insult her, and was relieved when she took the question in stride. "What kind of woman do you think I am?" Colleen asked with a lighthearted tone and a bit of a chuckle. "Oh, I guess we know the answer to that, don't we? Yes, it's Ryan's." "Are you two going to make a go of it?" David inquired. "Ryan is, and always will be, a bachelor. We would never work out, and I don't love him anyway. To his credit, he hasn't denied it and has been very agreeable about child support. I won't need the money, of course, but it's the principle. He's even said he plans to make an effort to be a good father, though he has doubts about his ability," Colleen explained. "You're keeping the baby," David stated. "Your generosity will allow me the freedom to raise my baby. Plus, I plan to have a full-time live-in nanny, which you will be indirectly paying for. That's why I wanted to keep the house," Colleen responded. "I did notice, which rather surprised me, but I wasn't going to argue. You know how much I love that house, and I want to raise my baby there. I think it'll be a good size for us and the nanny," Colleen added. "I think you're right. I must say, Colleen, I never expected this, but it makes sense." "Do your friends know?" David asked. "Oh, yes. We had a serious talk about their nonsense and lies. They felt bad for leading me down that path, but I assured them it was my choice. They finally admitted the truth, but I'm still the only one going for a divorce, so I guess that's a point in my favor. You know, if you ever need anything, you can call me," Colleen said. "I know, but it's time I stood on my own 2 feet. I went from Dad's house to college to your house. I promise I'll call if I need to, but I plan to do it myself," David assured her. With that, Colleen stood up, and David and Alana did the same. Colleen hugged them both, then turned and walked out the way she came.